Hello dear students, we are going to learn today the different theories of inflation. Okay, the different theories of inflation. We have already discussed what are the different theories of inflation in a broad manner, and then now we are going to see the intricacies or the details of these theories of inflation. Okay, now when you analyze the theories of inflation, you will come to know what are the causes and sources of inflation. What are the causes? CAUSES, causes and sources of inflation from the theories of inflation. So once you learn the theories of inflation, you will be able to list out what are the causes of inflation, where the inflation has come from. Okay. So, this perception and sources of inflation have been a matter of controversy between classicalists and monetarists, and between these groups of economists and a group of economists called structuralists. So, you will see a different group of economists explaining the causes of inflation in their theories, and there's a wide differences between these theories, because these theories are each group of economists according to their own time, the time of their living, what they observed they are saying. So there's a differences in their opinion, and that is why we will come to know that there are different causes of inflation. And why we put all this together, because even though the classical economist periods before Keynes, the classical and neoclassical economists, right, during their period, what they are proposing is still valid today. May not be fully because of that the reason, but then even then those variables also are causing inflation, and that is why we don't neglect these economists' views on inflation. So that's why it said the perception and sources of inflation have been a matter of controversy between the classicalists and monetarists. So we have classicalists, which includes also neoclassical economists, and then comes Keynes and Keynes' view, and then comes another group of economists called monetarists after Keynes, starting with Milton Friedman, and then another group of economists who are completely against the arguments of these different groups of economists called structuralists. So already I have explained that these people, structuralists, will say all these arguments which are put forward by the other group of economists cannot be applied to the less developed economies. So less developed economies have another reasons for the causes and sources of inflation in the less developed economies are different from this other group of economists. That's because, and they say that these classical, neoclassical, monetarist and Keynesian theories of inflation tells about the causes of inflation. These are applicable only to developed economies. That is the arguments raised by structuralists, another group of economists. That is, you already know that structuralist use of inflation I have already explained in detail. So that is already there. So Gunnar Myrdal and Streeton are the main economists who argue that structural changes in the structural imbalances in the economy causes inflation in less developed countries, and not the other source causes which the other economists put forward. Okay. Now these divergent views on the causes of inflation have led why there's so much of mistake, I don't know, have led to the emergence of various theories of inflation. Okay, students, so we are going to see the various theories of inflation, starting with the classical theory of inflation. I have already explained the classical theory and what it is, and now we are going to see in detail. Okay. The views of I to tell you frankly, when I went to ISEC for the interview for my PhD, they have the final step of interview. They have asked me what subject you teach. I said it is macroeconomics, and immediately the question they raised by the director of the institute was, okay, you tell me what are the different theories of inflation. So we have to learn things in a very accurate manner, so that we will not be defeated when such kind of questions are asked. And I was able to say one by one without any doubt, because I'm very clear. So if you say only study only the latest theories of inflation, then you will not know what are the arguments put forward by the earlier economist. Okay, now classical theory of inflation. Now whose contribution it is? So the views of the classical economist, namely Jean Bodin, Richard Cantillon, John Locke, David Hume, Adam Smith and William Petty, are collectively called as the classical theory of inflation. Okay, so classical theory of inflation is expresses the views of these economists. These are classical economists: Jean Bodin, Richard Cantillon, John Locke, David Hume, Adam Smith and William Petty. Now this theory, now who are the, the answer to who are the proponents of this theory of inflation you got. Next is it is based on what? It is based on what? Based on what? So theory is based on the classical quantity theory of money. Now with the problem, the issue becomes very easy for you, because you have learned first what is the classical quantity theory of money, and the famous equation used by the Irving Fisher, right? The MB is equal to PT, right? So it's based on the classical quantity theory of money. Now, what is that classical quantity theory of money is given by whom? The first comprehensive version of the classical theory of inflation, the classical theory of inflation was propounded by Irving Fisher in 1911. Okay. Now, according to his theory, inflation occurs in direct proportion to increase in money supply given the level of output. Now remember, price level is a function of money supply. When money supply increases, price level also increases. So there is a direct and proportionate relation to money supply and price level, and that is known as a strict proportionality version. I hope you remember. And the classical economists everywhere says that the output remains fixed. There is full employment in the economy. That's why given the level of output. Okay. So the classical theory of inflation is derived directly from the quantity theory of money. According to Fisher's quantity theory of money, M is equal to PT. So P is equal to MB by T, and therefore this equation can also be written in terms of, now this is the classical theory of money is based on, so inflation is based on quantity theory of money. Now this Wicksell and others will take this theory and explain the inflation in terms of percentage change. You can see here this equation can be also written in terms of percentage change, that is M plus V is equal to P plus Y. If M plus V is equal to P plus Y, then P is equal to M plus V minus Y. What is P here? The P here is the rate of inflation. M is equal to percentage change in money supply, capital letter M, and V is equal to percentage change in the velocity of money. V is a small v and big V. Small v is the percentage change in the velocity of big V, money, and Y is the percentage change in the real output. So you see here P is equal to M plus V minus Y. So going by the classical assumption, velocity of money V and the real output are given in the short run. Velocity of money and the real output are given in the short run. Okay. So what is more important is M. So the supply of money is the subject to variation depending upon the monetary policy of the central bank of the country. So when the supply, when V and Y remains constant, when M is changed, who is responsible for changing M? The money supply is changed by the Reserve Bank of a country, the Central Bank of a country, according to their monetary policy. So when the money supply increases, price level also increases because V and Y remains constant. Therefore, according to classical theory, prices rise in direct proportion to rise in money supply. Why there is a direct and proportionate relationship between money supply and price level? Because the theory assumes Y remains constant, that is as full employment level of output, and velocity of money also remains constant, and then when there is an increase in money supply, the price level also increases at the same percentage. Okay, this is the classical theory of inflation. And if you want to know a little more in detail how it takes place, it is Wicksell who has given some explanation of the process of inflation, which is not explained by these economists. These economists just explain the inflation and in terms of percentage change in money supply and percentage change in the price level. Now, Wicksell is an economist who will explain the process of this inflation, which is very interesting. If you want to see, it is better to understand how does it happen. And of course, as students of economics, you will be more interested to know how does it happen after all. When the money supply increases, price level increases, how? So this explanation is given by Wicksell. Very interesting. Now listen very carefully, you should learn. Now additional first step is that additional money supply flows. So we have already learned the cause is money supply. Now where the money supply comes from? Additional money supply flows into the economy in the form of loans and advances made by the banks to the businessmen to finance new investment. So what is the source? What is the cause of increase in money supply? The loans are taken by banks, from the banks by the businessmen in order to finance a new investment. So this is how the loans, because of these new loans to finance investment, additional money supply flows into the economy, right? That's the first stage, first step. We are explaining the process, okay? Now, whenever there is an increase in investment demand, you know that investment demand is one of the components of aggregate demand. What are the components of aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus T plus Xn. You have already learned that. So remember that. So this demand increases the investment demand increases the aggregate demand, and especially they say if the aggregate demand increases, the demand for labor also increases. Investment demand increases, the demand for labor increases because they want to they need workers to employ, right? For their new investment project they need workers. So demand for labor increases. Now what happens? We have the theory assumes, the classical economist assumes that there is the economy is in the state of full employment. So when the economy is in the state of full employment, what happens? Additional resources are not available at the prevailing price because all the resources are fully employed. So you cannot get the additional resources unless you pay a higher price. Prevailing price you will not get. So you as an investment leader of the investment project, you can attract the employees from the other industry by paying more wages, right? Prevailing prices you will not get it. So that is what is written here. The additional resources are therefore acquired by bidding higher price. That is a higher price of labor is wage, and this makes the beginning of rise in price level. You know that when the wage increases, what is going to happen? Wage increases, prices of the cost of production increases, prices of the commodities increases, and when the prices of the commodities increases, what happens? There is no production cannot be increased in tune with the increase in prices because the economy is always in the state of full employment. So the entire rise in prices will be caught in the prices of goods and services. So that is how the inflation takes place. Okay. Now, rise in the input prices, especially wages, leads to increase in money incomes. That also is there. Money income also increases. And this leads to rise in demand for consumer goods and services. Under the condition of full employment, supply of goods does not increase. So, therefore, higher prices are bid to acquire goods. As a result, prices increase in aggregate demand is absorbed by the so okay, as a result the increase in aggregate demand as a result okay of this price increase or as a result of this price increase, the aggregate demand, as a result, the increase in aggregate demand is absorbed by the rise in the prices. This is how increases in money supply causes inflation. Okay, so when the aggregate demand increases, the increase in aggregate demand is absorbed by the rise in prices. So this is how increase in money supply causes inflation. It can also happen the other way, which I have told, the cost of production increases, so prices of goods and services increases, but at the same time production cannot be brought forth, so inflation also increases. Okay, students, so this is how the classical theory of inflation is explained. So once again I will explain, see in a short form, that is loans and advances made by the businessman to finance investment, that leads to increase in investment demand. Increase in investment demand leads to increase in aggregate demand, especially labor, and because there is full employment in the economy, no additional resources can be brought forth by the this particular entrepreneur, and so he will increase the price of resources, especially of labor. So when the labor price increases, it leads to increase in input prices. Input prices means a more increase in money income from in the hands of the laborers, and increase in money income create increase in demand for consumer goods, and the theory assumes that there is a constant supply of consumer goods, and so increase in prices prices increases till the aggregate demand is absorbed by the rise in prices. Okay, students, this is how classical theory of inflation is explained.